But anyway, Kanon Dean, a longtime friend, a one-time colleague, and now somebody I'm very proud of who has made the leap into startup land and gained some serious footing with your startup. And, you know, we've sort of caught up a few times over the years, but I'm stoked to hear the actual sort of progress and feedback on what that journey's been like and all that. But anyway, thanks a lot for coming.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's going to be great. Chris is being too kind, by the way, for the listeners. Chris was my first boss, and he probably should have let me go.
No,
first year was great. A rough one. But totally self-inflicted from me.
I mean, you're 22 years old, fresh out of college, jumping into private equity. I mean, that's a tough spot. And we had a lot going on. It was me and you against the world at that point. So we had a lot of companies managing, and but it was a good way to learn. Get thrown in the deep end, and you did. I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah, it was probably the first year you're figuring it all out, but you got to the point where people were relying on you individually at all the companies, and you became the master of accounting, Excel, financial analytics, real estate.
That's true.
That's where I coined the phrase mean Dean, the real estate machine. But yeah, man, no, that was a cool ride. And it was great, getting to work with you. And then, we both went and did something else. And you in particular jumped in both feet, just found a thing that you love and you're doing it. And it's been what, three years pursuing that, or?
Yeah. So I left where we were working at before in September 2022 officially. So yeah, it's coming up on 3 years.
Nice.
I kind of had a pit stop in between there, working at one of the portfolio companies. So I wouldn't say I was like full time.
Well, you got to do something to keep the lights on.
That's right. And kind of got pulled into doing something a little bit more than I wanted to during that time period for about 6 months. So I would say I've been full time pursuing startup stuff since March of 2023, the end of March. So April 1, 2023.
Awesome. Do you want to talk about what it is? Or?
Yeah. So my brother and I co-founded Team Fi. Got the logo on
Team
here.
Fi, there you go.
Gear is on for those watching on Shorts. Team Fi does free fundraising tools for mostly youth sports teams, but also we do quite a bit of churches. We do quite a bit of nonprofits.
Really?
Yeah. Starting to get more into that with our newest products. So,
good deal.
Yeah. Anybody who's looking to raise money for an organization.
So this would be the alternative, like to the whole, like, even my kids' school this year, they did some fundraiser, and it's like a bunch of like light up junk toys and garbage.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, if you do this, then you can get these light up junk toys, and a huge amount of the money goes to the company selling the junk toys,
right, versus
the school that actually could use it.
Yep.
And so you're an alternative to that, or like, hey, buy this sleeve of popcorn for $20 and, much more than popcorn should cost. And nobody really wants the popcorn, but they want to support the kid in the sport or the band or whatever. So that's what this is.
That's right. And so you can think about like the fundraising world as like a spectrum. From on one end is like a highly prepared, prepared's the wrong word, a highly processized, where there's a company coming in and they've got all of these incentives like you're talking about. They've got an arranged thing like everybody needs to do X to meet Y, and then they're going to take a substantial portion of the money, right? Maybe that's 60%, maybe that's 20%, somewhere in that range, right? I've seen all of that kind of range. On another end of the spectrum is your simple donation page, where you're posting that and you're saying, hey, pay me, I'd like to collect funds. Would you like to donate, right?
Right. I need to get my dog neutered, and you need to give me some money for that.
That's right.
And then somebody will raise like $250,000 for that.
That's right. And so like a lot of that space is like GoFundMe. Like that's kind of the ubiquitous term. But you could also think about setting up a PayPal. PayPal has donation pages.
Oh, really?
You could do a Venmo, right? At some level, if you're just setting up a Venmo, you can donate to anybody because, you know, if they choose to Venmo you, that's like me giving you $5. No one really has a say about that, right? Where Team 5 fits in is is basically said, look, there's this whole market of schools that are paying a lot for their fundraisers, more towards this first end that I was just talking about, highly processized, that... I'm just going to check the cameras. Oh, okay. That maybe there's a certain subset of people in that market that want something more closer to the tooling side, that other end of the spectrum, where it's less, where you're paying a much lower percentage in fees, right? And so that's basically was the thesis.
Yeah.
When we started, 2.5 years ago, March 2023, and so far that's proven out to be true.
That's cool.
Now we do like a certain, a bunch of different tooling in there. It is not just donation pages, although we do have a few, people who use our products just as donation pages, but yeah, that was basically the thesis, is say, okay, wow, look at this market. They're paying a lot for their fundraisers. I bet there's a certain subset in there that doesn't know that they could do this for much cheaper and have something much more flexible that they can tune to their process. And let's go do that and build those products for them.
Well, that's huge. I think that's the cornerstone of disrupting or creating something new is find a place where the current option is either giving way too much economics to a middleman or whatever, or where the flexibility is not there for the person that's trying to use this. And, I honestly, I mean, when we found out, that this junk toy seller was getting 50 cents on the dollar, and in return, your kid comes home with some piece of shit that you absolutely don't want them to have anyway. And it's like, that's crazy. And this is for a school,
right?
So your guys' model is tremendous. I mean, this sport team, the band, the charity, the school, whoever gets all the money, it's free to them. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible. I mean, that's an awesome model. And then have you had sort of, was it like your original idea was the right one, or did you have to make some twists and turns?
Oh man, I chuckle because we pivoted so many times. So like when we first started out, we had this bright idea that we came up with, and we were like, oh, this must be what we're gonna do. We're gonna sell subscription product, because everybody wants a subscription product to
annual recurring revenue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so we wanted that recurring revenue. So we're going to go sell that to this customer base and say, look, you can do unlimited fundraisers and we'll take no percentage. And I think that was getting at the right thing. We didn't want to take a percentage of what people were making as part of selling our tooling.
Yeah.
But we had the wrong approach because guess what? You still have to outlay the funds. And what if you don't ever use a fundraiser? Well, then you're out the cost of the subscription.
Oh.
So that basically was the first 3 months, I would say. Mm-hmm. Found out really quickly that there was no demand for that. Then the next 3 months, we had this
I don't want to stop. I do want to stop you because I'm really interested.
Yeah.
How did you find out? Like, what is the process? Like, you're out there talking to people and they're just like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, how vigorously do you pursue until you're like, you know what, this isn't it?
So basically I did some customer calls, probably about 5 to 10 to 15, somewhere in that range, and brought up on all of those customer calls the idea, and about 0 people were excited about paying for subscription.
Roughly 0.
And then the biggest moment was we went to a trade show up in Traverse City, the Michigan Athletic Director Conference, and we had this. We were still kind of debating 2 ideas: the idea we were going to pivot to, and the subscription idea. And my brother and I, this is the first trade show we've ever been to, so we're also not very experienced salesmen ever. It's been a long time since we've had to sell anything. And so we're like, all right, we'll fly with both ideas. and you'll never get better feedback than when you're elevator pitching somebody, because you're just going to see it in their face, right? You're going to start to tell them, and they're going to look down at the ground. They're not going to be engaged in the conversation. They're not going to ask you questions back. They'll just say, "Oh yeah, it sounds like a great idea." And that's sort of the, if you don't see kind of the light in their eyes start to perk up, or they ask you another question, if they just say, "Oh, that's a great idea," that's a bad idea. Because basically no one's going to have the heart to tell you that it's a bad idea. Basically nobody.
Yeah. But they vote with their wallet.
Yeah.
So that's so it's kind of like a real-time A/B test. You're like, let's pitch 2 ideas and see which ones people like.
That's right.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It sounds much more thought out than what it was when we were going up there.
So in your experience, like, so for me, that going out and selling yourself is probably one of the most terrifying things you can do.
Right.
You're like, I'm going to get a table at this thing. I'm going to go to all these coaches, and all of them are there. They're all calm because they're the customer at this point.
Mm-hmm. They're
all in the groove. They all know each other. And you're just like, hey, let me give you this idea that I have. I mean, that's how did you find that experience?
Terrible. I think we're cut from the same cloth there. I'm more analytical, and that's certainly the way I fit.
Is your brother like salesy or
not at all? Even less so. He's more of a design guy. So we kind of, our sweet spots are design and analysis. Wow. And so we've had to learn that.
Yeah.
The only thing.
So because there's not a lot of people that to me, and I like people. I really do. And I like talking to people. I like selling things, but I still get terrified by that. And there's not a lot of people that will really go do that. I mean, I think that's an understated step to like go to a trade show with a brand new idea. You've gotten the shaft 15 times already. You're like, well, let's go talk about these things.
Yeah.
Take yourself back to that moment and describe, like, how did you get yourself psyched up? And then it's going to segue into your other background, but was there similarities?
Well, I think the short answer is I was just in hell. I felt like I was at my former job where we worked together. I had kind of progressed and hit a wall. I wasn't making any progress. And I was saying to myself, all right, well, this, we got to get moving here because we're not making any more progress, and this is just a little too comfortable. And I didn't have any other better ideas, but I knew I was grasping onto this idea of like the same visceral reaction you're having to the fundraiser your daughter ran. Man, I can't believe people are paying all this or donating to things and not realizing that their dollars being subtracted immediately.
Right.
And so like I was holding those two things, and I was like, man, I got to go make this work. I got to figure this out. And I'm just going to put myself out there. And yeah.
That's wild, man. Now, so how much do you, because obviously the other thing to talk about is you've been a person that's been competitive and pursued excellence your whole life. So your other part of your background is you were a wrestler in high school, quite a good one. I don't know where your state. Do you go to the States and all that? And
yeah, I was a good high school wrestler. I was not a great high school wrestler.
Wow. So that's the Dean modesty, but very good enough to get into Harvard and wrestle on the Harvard wrestling team.
Yep.
So obviously both your educational and athletic drive and so forth was there.
Yep.
One doesn't luck into that. That's a lot of work. And I know that you guys are humble, but and wrestling at that level too, right? But whether it's the high level of the States in high school or then at the D1 collegiate level, there's a degree, especially wrestling, you're out there on your own. And it's a similar, to me, it's a similar thing. Like when you're out there selling yourself, you either fail or succeed, and you live with the whole weight of that. It's not like when you're on a soccer team. Not that losing is fun when you're on a soccer team, but there's a whole host of things that occurred during that soccer game. You lose a wrestling match, you lose the wrestling match.
Right.
It's a similar thing. Was there any parallels that you're either aware of at the time or look back on like, yeah, I think it was a similar feeling?
Yeah, I think it's the exact same feeling. It's the same feeling I draw on. Knowing that you're going to be all right when you get your ass kicked. That's
true, man.
That's number one. And then two, just having an internal locus of control. Like, you know that you drive results, and knowing that you've seen it before in a different venue, your wrestling career, that when you focused on something, you did get better at it. And maybe you didn't hit all of your goals, but you hit some of them, and being like, all right, well, I'm okay with failing, and I want this result, right? Take you back to my leaving the job we were at before. Yeah. I need to get better, and I want to prove it to myself that I can start a company. So I know if I focus on it, I will get somewhere. And even if it's not where I want to be at the end of the day, I can't really fault myself for that desire. So, it was the same, drawing on the same stuff.
Did you know it at the time, or do you look back and think that? Were you like, you're going into this trade show? Because I've been to trade shows.
Yeah.
When it wasn't even me and my startup.
Yep.
And it's still, you're still kind of amped up. You're like, oh, I got to make some sales. Like, yep. I need to show something here. And then going out and selling my own thing has been, which I've done before and I've done now. And to me, it gets easier, just like anything that you practice, but there's still like, it's almost there's a degree of like amped up, right? Did you walk into that trade show like you're ready to go on the mat?
No, I would say the first time, it was probably like the first time you go out on the mat ever, or the first time in college, or the first time of the season, where you kind of forget, right? And you don't, and honestly, because it's a different venue, you're like, man, I had a lot of self-doubt. I probably, well, as you know, I tried to leave where we were working at even a year before, right? So I was working at our first job for 4 years.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Right. So I tried to leave at year 3. And part of why I didn't leave in that year 3 is you don't know, you've never done it before, so you don't know if you can do it. Yeah. And so going back to your question, that first time, you have a lot of fear because you're not sure if you're capable of becoming that man. You've kind of seen it in a different venue, your wrestling career, but you're like, man, is everybody who starts a business just a lot smarter than me? And, so you're not sure, and you're like, fuck, I could fail here for sure. And so you're a little timid. We were definitely a little timid at that show.
Yeah.
But as you get going, those first couple next shows, you're definitely getting juiced for it. You're like, all right, we got to make it happen.
Let's do it.
We got to find some people who want to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you do get to a point when you have the confidence, like, it's like probably after you pin somebody, you're like, I want to go wrestle right now. I want to do that again.
Right.
And that is the drug of selling.
Right.
When you land it,
right,
you're like, I can never not do that again.
Right.
That was awesome.
Well, that's kind of what I think about. Okay, let's say Team Phi goes to 0 tomorrow. I'm like, wow, you've kind of unlocked this new skill set, or at least the belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you can't go back.
No.
You can't go back and do anything else other than what you're, this sort of startups and stuff. I don't, and I say that to myself a lot. I'm like, I don't think I could ever do anything else other than what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. Once you get the taste of it. So speaking of skill sets, because it wasn't like you just were doing trade shows, you programmed the website, built the whole thing. You did all the tech stuff. So this is like one part tech.
Yep.
One part strategy, one part selling, marketing.
Yep.
Huge part of it, especially for a platform like that. I mean, it's getting in front of people, getting in front of the right people.
Right.
Just learning all of this stuff, like all up in a fire hose. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been the single best educational experience that I could think of.
That's awesome.
It was very similar to working with you for the first year at OXO, I would say, where you're kind of
equally as obnoxious and terrifying.
Well, there was no Italians from Long Island involved, but not yet, at least. No, just drinking through the fire hose and trying to learn it all at once, right? When I was working with you, I was trying to learn how 4 different companies operated at once, not having any framework of business at all beforehand. And so I was learning business at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you jump in and you're trying, okay, I'm now responsible for everything. You know what's the strangest thing, which has like now been unlocked for me, and it's very tangential to this, is I always felt like I was like back office guy, right? So we did the financials for our portfolio companies. We were on kind of the quarterly board decks, right? We were not really ever driving sales.
Right.
And I felt like when there was ever the problem in our companies, it was almost 80% of the time sales driven. There weren't enough of it. And I felt like there was always this kind of magical aura around salespeople and sales because they were the ones talking to the customer and we as back office people. And I always felt that was kind of a blocker for me. I was like, man, am I just not a sales guy? Like, am I never going to talk to a customer in my career?
Yeah.
Right. And going through this, I've realized, no, that's, it's possible. You can it kind of tore down that wall for me.
Yeah. That's, it is. And it is a whole different sort of fear. You know what I learned, and I don't know if you've had this experience. So, cause I sort of had the same thing, was like, I started a company. Again, it wasn't a successful one, or you would know about it. But like right when I got out of the military, my whole thing was to go do this consulting in Africa. Right. And I wanted to start like a whole consulting and M&A firm that was all focused on Africa. It didn't work out for a number of reasons. Specific, I mean, the biggest one is like, there's no M&A in Africa. So, lesson one in like addressing your market.
You want the trophy for the top M&A guy? Congrats, you got it.
But other than that, I ended up again sort of pivoting around and getting great experience there and lived there for 5 years and loved it, and was basically at that point working as an operating partner for a private equity firm that was there doing stuff, and it was cool. But I do remember even at that time, like trying to sell myself and go to these investors and raise money. And that was like a learning curve. But then I basically went and did, the finance industry.
Right.
Had the same experience you did, where it's like you don't get a lot of control. Then I became the CEO of one of the portfolio companies, which actually was pretty awesome, because then you get all the control.
180.
And I enjoyed that immensely. And that was all in industrial stuff. And the one thing I always lamented it at the time, which was like, you're in B2B sales, you're selling to one specific guy. Yep. And if that guy has, doesn't like you or he's upset, then he's just not going to buy. And I was like, I really have never done anything consumer facing until this most recent project. And the big difference is you have instantaneous feedback in B2B sales because you're dealing with one purchasing guy or one CEO or one buyer. Right. You're going to know that he doesn't want to buy it. He's probably going to tell you it's either because of price, because your quality stinks, he hates you, he'll curse you out. But at the very least, that's feedback. Mm-hmm.
Maybe all four.
Yeah, oftentimes. But now, like with consumer facing stuff, the thing I never considered was like you're selling to an abyss.
Right.
And you don't get feedback as to why people aren't buying or aren't getting your product. That's why your idea of going to the trade show and pitching people, like A/B testing your business model basically on the spot, is brilliant, because you feedback is the key to consumer sales. Right. If you can figure out why people are or are not buying, you've cracked 99% of what you need to do to figure out consumer facing sales, I think.
Yeah. No,
and I don't know how that's been for you, but
well, so I would make a distinction. We're not consumer, but we're as close to consumer as you could get. You have
like
to
the
be
coach is your consumer,
right,
basically, or the school. Or
you have to be representing an organization to use our tools. So it's about I always describe it as as close to consumer as a B2B business can get, but at the end, but it is a near instantaneous sale, right? The sales cycle is not long at all. It's about as short as it could be. And yeah, I mean, that's if you're not like I started the podcast with, if you're not seeing the light in their eyes and reacting to you and engaging you in conversation as you're doing your elevator pitch, that is what's required. The base case is they say, oh, cool, that's a great idea. If they tell you it's a great idea, you suck.
Right.
They need to be getting their wallets out and telling you as you're telling, oh, okay, I'll take one.
Yep.
Right. And that's, because people are too nice. That no one wants to give you good feedback ever.
Yeah. Sometimes you beg. We've begged for it. Like, tell us why. Tell us why we suck.
Right.
And nobody's. I mean, and we all get those like surveys. And I've never filled out a survey.
Right.
Never.
Right.
But I use myself all the time as like the litmus test for and I don't get feedback because I'm like, well, screw you.
No, the best feedback you can get is a purchase, and then the second best feedback you can get is a second purchase, and then a third best is a referral to a friend.
Oh, there you go.
If the second you start to get people who walk in your door and you're like, how did you even find out about this? And they're like, oh, my buddy down the street told me. That's when you know you have something, because that's
sweet.
If you made a difference for one person, that's where your compounding starts to unlock.
Yep.
Then that guy's gonna tell somebody, and then that's
cool.
When that turns over, that's
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what has been? So I sort of cut you off, and we went on like a 20-minute. So we were talking about your pivot cycle, and so you started off going to one trade show and A/B testing your model.
Yep.
Okay, so then was it that second time that you're like, okay, this is it?
Well, we're driving home, and my brother and I are talking, and we're like, all right, well, we made 2 sales. The one guy, and both of them want to use, the percentage, and both of them are very excited that we're taking far less than any other company they're using. And we're still taking a percentage out of their donations. We're like, all right, well, let's go. I mean, 2 customers, that's basically double the amount of customers we had coming in. So let's roll. And so we do that, and we're going, and we're kind of getting feedback and stuff. And then somebody says, I used, so you're basically competing on price, right? And then somebody says, oh, I used this other company that was even lower. They weren't taking it. And you're like, what do you mean? How can you be even lower than nothing? And you're like, so you do some research, and you're like, oh, there's a different business model out there that takes nothing and kind of flips the model and asks for people to, when they're going to donate, if they want to tip your business at checkout, just like going to Starbucks.
Interesting.
And so you see that, and you're like, holy crap. So we have made some sales with our existing business. We just ran into the first person we've ever heard of that's doing it this way. Nobody else is doing it. Why don't we just embrace this model too and just make our whole business, hey, we're going to do this tip model where all the money we make is from people willingly tipping us. And we're going to just go take it to this market that's still really backwards and still has a lot of people paying this crazy percentage.
Wow.
And so, and then that's really when it started to pop for us. Making that, because then you could say, well, it actually is a free fundraising service because we're not taking anything, we're not charging anything for our service to you, coach.
Right.
And that was probably another 6 months or another 3 months after, so 6 months total. But that's when it started to pop for us. Wow. And that was a lesson, because I always think at OXO, and this is true anywhere when you sit around with your buddies and debate, you always debate these ideas. This is a lesson I gleaned from this. You always debate business ideas, and it's kind of like a what's the analogy? It's like it's like we're playing this game of checkers, and like, you know how checkers is very linear. Like, oh, if you go here, I'm going to block you here, right? So you'll say an idea, and then your response will be, oh, there's somebody already doing that. And then you'll be like, oh, well, that's a shit idea. I didn't have a fucking original idea. I'm fucked, right? And my lesson from that is you don't need that original of an idea. You need and ideas are not binary. You need to look at ideas on a spectrum. And what you need to be doing is on the spectrum of ideas, not be doing this very like has-been idea. You need to be doing something that's original. Doesn't need to be incredibly original. Just needs to be 80% original. And go after that and do it better than the other guys pursuing that same original strategy, right?
That's good.
And so that's kind of the lesson I learned.
Wow.
Is like just find something that's slightly a good idea, but then pursue it harder. And then that's all the trajectory you need. Because then the nice thing about business is it's actually not winner, unless you're playing in like a weird winner take all market like Facebook, right?
Right.
But most businesses are not winner take all. So guess what, dude? If somebody else gets that idea, as long as you're sort of earlier on, you're still going to end up somewhere better than you were before.
Yeah.
You know? That's
really interesting. I think that would resonate with a lot of people that have thought about starting a business. Yeah. It's like, you know, if I don't have a brand new thing, then don't even bother.
Right.
And the reality is, it's part of it is execution. Part of it is it'll never be the same exact thing. And you can even look at social media. Yeah, I mean, if there was Facebook and it's still like a behemoth, but then for whatever reason, Instagram, which to me was like, well, isn't that just Facebook?
Right.
And then there's like, what's it called? The other one that all the young people like. TikTok.
Yep.
When I'm like, well, isn't that just Instagram? But there's tweaks to the way the algorithm works, how your friend liking and all that stuff works. And there'll be another one. There'll be something else that eventually, and heed my words, young people, in 20 years, somebody's going to tell you that TikTok is for old people.
Right. That's right.
Apparently that's what Facebook is now. It's for old people. But you know, nothing stays the same. And there isn't one of anything, really. There really is. Even computers, you know, you've got at least two. It's unfortunate. I wish there was more.
Right.
So that's closer to winner take all, but you can't, and nothing exists in a vacuum. So that's super interesting mentality to have, especially if you want to be, if you're like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what to do. I've had all these good ideas, but then I found something. And we had that experience too with Locavana. You know, we had gone pretty far down the path, and somehow one day I stumbled across this thing that was a pretty similar business model.
Yep.
And for like 30 seconds, I was like heartbroken. I was like, I had what you just said. I was like, oh no, this isn't an original idea. Then I did the math. I was like, wait a second. First of all, I'm a person that would have used this if I ever heard about it. Second of all, I've been in this industry for like 6 months and I've still never heard about it.
Right.
You know, obviously something isn't going right, or they're not, you know, and then you look at it and like direct to consumer sales in food, it's 6% of the total food market.
Right.
Everybody out there could quintuple and we would still be at 18% of the whole market. You know what I mean? So that's a super good point for anybody to keep in mind, is like, just find an idea you love and pursue the fuck out of it.
Yep.
And you will do it better than whatever exists.
And you'll get somewhere.
Interesting, man. That's such a good point.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's such a good point. So, okay. So you get to that point now.
Yep.
You're like, now we've got a good business model, but you've had a couple other sort of eureka moments.
Yeah. Just along the way, just realizing that people want novelty when they fundraise. So we started out with one type of fundraiser, and then as you go, you have people asking you to do other things for them. And
that's you mentioned your number one best feedback is when people give you ideas.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that means they trust you, right? And they're like, hey, would you make this for me? And so, cool. Just widening the surface area, right? Oh, I don't want to just do this fundraiser. I want to do this, or I want to do this. And so that's been just I remember being nervous. It was actually last year at this exact time. It's kind of feels like forever ago. We were launching our first new product ever after having been in business for, a year and 2 months, and being like, we got it shipped pretty quickly. We did it in about a month or a month and a half, and we had not shipped a lot of code at this point. And we were like, man, did we just do that too fast? And then we sold 3 in a row, like boom, boom, boom. And then we were like, wow, we wouldn't have made those sales if we didn't have that. And that's kind of when a light clicked off. And we're like, all right, well, you need to kind of widen your net a bit. You can't just do the same
True,
thing.
yeah. Like you said, I mean, you can compete against yourself in a way, not compete, but expand your horizon so that you don't become obsolete.
That's right.
Least. Yeah, that's
so,
cool.
But I think that's more specific to our business. I could see some other things where you want to be more focused. I think fundraising in particular, you kind of want to be more novel. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you a question. This is like a human interest question.
Yeah.
And I was talking with Seth the other day. We were talking about something he heard where like, these people raised a bunch of money for some, it was one of your, like my dog got ran over.
Yeah.
They raised like a ton of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which those things somehow go viral too. I don't even know why. And then it becomes a thing to do. But then they didn't, or actually it was something to do with legal costs. They were going to use it. They're raising money for legal costs, but then they like ended up buying cars and stuff with it.
Right.
Are there laws where if you say I'm going to raise money for this obviously is different than what you do because it's very clear it's for a team, but I'm thinking more of like the other platforms or just any raising money for any reason. Would they have to be like, could you be considered fraudulent if you raise money?
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
So, and it really comes down to, so I don't think you yourself as the recipient could be, I'm not, this is some legal technicalities, but basically it comes down to a lot of what the platform has to do, what the business is de-risking that and creating an environment of trust. So if you look at donation platforms, specifically GoFundMe, it's going to say who it's for the benefit of and who it's being organized by.
Oh.
So what it's doing is kind of giving you as the donor recourse on that and saying, hey, this is who I want you to go look up. If you don't, don't donate it. If you don't like that, you're going to give Chris Marandino money. Right. So that's sort of one part of it. The other part of it is, it's actually just related to it. Like if you think about a GoFundMe where it's literally just the donation page from one person to another, it's really no different than a Venmo. A Venmo being one checking account to another, right? It just kind of looks differently and it's framed as a donation, right? We started this call, I was telling you about how Venmo works. And Venmo is equally as concerned about people, using it for fraud.
Well, yeah,
right?
they have to have the same KYC laws and stuff, I would assume.
Yes.
As a bank and everything.
And so do fundraising companies.
Oh, really?
We have the same KYC stuff.
Yeah, which makes sense because everybody watched Breaking Bad. Yeah. So everybody knows if you do drugs and if you sell drugs and you want to like launder it, just donate money to yourself. I don't think it really works like that though.
Well,
it may have at the time of Breaking Bad. But.
Right. Well, there's an interesting thing. The PayPal founders. So PayPal also kind of a Venmo. I think they own Venmo now. But payment network. The PayPal, I heard an interview about that with them, like long before TeamFi, and they said, I don't know if you could start PayPal today because PayPal was started pre-KYC, Pre-Patriot Act.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing, they were just sending, you could send money to anybody without any, I don't think it was, I don't think there was like an opt-in on the other side. It was, and then if you like read their story, what was the big thing was, because who ends up coming back on you is not the federal government first, it's the credit card companies because they're dealing with crazy chargebacks. And they're like, I'm going to shut you off. Well, Visa and MasterCard shut you off of your payment network, you're done. Because that is actually a duopoly, right? Like there's only two people. And so what they spend a lot of time doing is spinning up this whole fraud team to go and basically do, what the KYC process does today is, prevent, I think it was Russian fraudsters from getting on and, blowing up their payments network.
Really?
And just using it to do malicious stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so
it was like the original Bitcoin. It was like anonymous. Well, it wasn't anonymous.
I'm not sure. It's really, I guess full disclosure, I've only used PayPal a couple times. It's kind of before my time.
I used it during the eBay days of the 90s.
Right.
That was the only time.
Right. But it just kind of goes to show you, like, that's actually your question about fraud, while seemingly you felt like it was tangential or human interest. No, it's like it's the whole, a fundraising company is not so different from a payments network.
Yeah.
It's very related. It's very related.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you've also had to get boned up on regulations, obviously.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not how you like to spend your time, but it's just part of the business. So.
Yeah. Well, and again, like you said, it's what people gives you. It gives people confidence in your platform too, to know that you're not flying by night, so to speak.
That's right.
So the bottom line is, could you do what the Breaking Bad guy did today or nowadays?
So I'm not an expert on Breaking Bad.
Oh, you didn't see Breaking Bad? I was like a drug dealer, and then his son set up like a donation page because he had cancer, and it was like, oh, donate. And so they would take their own money. Now, this is where I think it gets a little far-fetched, though, because how would you can't donate cash through the internet. Maybe I'm reading too much into a TV show.
Yeah, how he's converting cash to...
There must have
been the cash
somewhere.
To digital would be where you would catch it, right?
Yeah. So what about Bitcoin for donations in the future?
That's an interesting one. I've thought about this. I got a buddy who's got a crypto company, and I was asking him about it, and he didn't really have a ton of great, like, hey, there's this product that's doing that. Maybe there's not a lot of need for that.
Is Bitcoin really anonymous anymore, do you think, or is it less?
Oh, man, you're asking the wrong guy. I kind of checked out of it after I lost all my money
too, I guess.
in 2021.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it would be sort of no different. I mean, it's not like you're trying to it's not like you're trying to make it anonymous to make a donation to a football team. That's pretty much, that's as clean as it gets.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I was telling my brother, we were working through some of this regulation stuff, and he was kind of sweating it, and I was like, dude, think about what we're trying to do from a business sense. We are trying to raise money for youth teams. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to send money to the Houthis.
Yeah. That's it.
And what is, do people want to shut down us raising money for that? No, they don't. So we'll just kind of do what we need to do, and we'll get this right, and it's fine.
So did you ever have a moment then during your whole cycle where you're like, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm fucked.
So in March, I'll kind of walk through the psychology. In April, when we thought we were going to be doing the subscription product and kind of that first conference, it was more exciting. I'd saved up a bunch of money to do this, and I was like, it was thrilling, and it was the opposite of the rush I had been feeling, right? Where I was just kind of sitting behind a desk and going to board meetings all day. And so that first 3 months, didn't really feel it at all. I actually went on a vacation right after I quit and started the company. So like I was on this vacation for like 10 days. It was nice. Wasn't really worried about a whole lot at all. And then got to maybe, we had like an initial spike of customers we landed, mostly like friends and stuff. And because it is a sort of a consumer product, so you actually know a lot of people who would buy it, right? Sure. Or use it. And that first couple, we actually had one customer like unprompted, like write us like, this is the best single product I've ever used.
Oh.
And that was like a green flag where we're like, oh wow, if we can do that without trying, really, maybe we got something here. Mm-hmm. But then that quickly shifted to, right before we made the switch to the free model of like, wow, we just did a revenue month of like $800. That's not a whole lot of money. Maybe not even $800. I want to say, $800. And that's 6 months in, and you're looking at the cash pile you had that's no longer there, and you're like, all right. Then you set a rule in your head, and you're like, I'm going to do this. And you do the math of how much money you have left, and you're like, I'm going to do this for this amount of time. And if we look up, and I think it was a year from now, I said, I'm going to do this all of 2024. Mm-hmm. And if we don't make any if we don't look at it this, and we've got this kind of, we're sustaining ourselves, I think was the rule I made. If I'm not sustaining myself, then we're done.
Yep.
And it was a good ride, and we gave it our all, but that's where we're going to call it. And until then, I'm not going to worry about it because that doesn't do anything for anybody. And so that was kind of the worst moment. Probably October 2023. You're like, man, I'm not doing so well.
Yeah. So what did you have like a process where you mentally worked through that? Was it just head down, or did you have to like reconcile things with yourself? Like, I still believe this. I still think this is a good idea. Because obviously the risk in saying like, I'm going to give myself a year is then you take your foot off the gas because you're kind of defeated. Obviously that wasn't the case for you. Yeah. You like doubled down and worked and continued to pivot and continued to find the right path. How did you find the motivation at that point?
I think it's just because I knew I had some tricks up my sleeve, and I was like, okay, well, we just kind of pivoted to this free thing. I think that's going to go well. I got some other ideas for marketing and stuff. I know I'm going to do that. I've got some customers who are pleased, like really like the product at this point. I just don't have enough of them. Yep. Like going back to that green flag, I got a customer here referring me to like 20 other people. Yeah. Okay, that's a good start. Like, we got the ingredients here. I think it's like looking at a fire, right? I think I see a little freaking smoke down there. Like, let me just let this play out, know? And even though I'm freezing my ass off right now, maybe someday I can get to where I'm at now, where I'm getting ready to cook dinner. Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
Getting ready to cook dinner, but nice. I don't know how good of a dinner it's going to be. And then we might sleep in the cold. So,
and through this all, you're married too, like fairly recently.
Yeah, that's right. We got, my wife and I got married. It'll be 3 years in June. So kind of the whole duration of the startup. So.
Wow. How was that then? That's like 2 startups.
Yeah. I mean, we've been together a while. Right. Not living together a while, but been together for 12 years or 11 years, I want to say. Okay. So 2013, fall of 2013. So 12 years this fall. So the relationship part is not that rocky. I mean, getting married and moving in together definitely has its challenges. Sure. But I think she trusted.
But she was like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, I think she trusted me and was like, go do what you want to do. And I think she, like I said, she had heard how miserable I was, right? I mean, hey, look, I don't, what's worse, coming home to a spouse every day who, makes money, but has a steady salary, I'll put it that way, but is just like bitching and moaning about, man, I just did not. Or someone who's like makes no money, but is very excited about it. I think there's probably a middle ground. You'd like both, but I think,
yeah, no, I mean, that's great. And obviously you need that. So I think that, you need somebody that's going to be supportive, bottom line. That's right. So obviously you had that, and that's, I don't think you can do it without it, unless you do it so quick that they don't notice. And you're like, right, I made this work so quick, you have nothing to worry about. But I don't think that happens very often.
Yeah. That's, yeah, I think that comes down to it. You want somebody who's supporting you.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah,
good deal. Now let me ask you this: do you see AI playing into your platform at any point, or do you keep a pulse on AI at all?
Yeah, we're using it a lot in our business. Oh, yeah? But in the background, it's not a part of the tool. Right. The tools are kind of very pointed and so it's like. To date, I've found hard to incorporate AI into it, into the actual software. Case in point, like if you go and use your Venmo, like there's no kind of like AI tool in your Venmo, right? So we'll see. I'm not writing that off, but I found it to be very useful for other things that we're doing in our business. So,
you have any opinions on it? On just AI in general, as a tech guy?
Well, so I think like kind of where it ends is it's like the sum of all existing human knowledge, and so if we're all it's kind of like it's exactly like people's critique of index funds. So the classical critique on an index fund is if we're all invested in an index, if the market is 100% index funds, then what is the market exactly, and how is it going up and down?
Right.
Does it make any sense? Right.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, so apply that to AI. If we're the only thing that we're doing on the internet is just AI generated, then is it self-generating? That doesn't quite make sense. Is it just we've just kind of plateaued out and it's like flatlined, and the sum of human knowledge is actually finite now, and nothing's being contributed, right? And so like that's an interesting question. I'm not sure where it lands. That's and then opinions. I feel bad for the people who published a lot of content out there for free, only to have OpenAI scrape it and resell it to people. If I was like a crazy content guy, that would make me want to go blow up their building. To be honest, like what's my recourse on them, man?
It is
like
pretty crazy, but you made it public. I mean, that's the bottom line.
That's true. So you thought the world was going to be one way forever, and it ended up being a different way.
Right.
So I guess
I think it's definitely going to change. I talk about this stuff. I've become very. I don't even think I've told you. Like I had this terrifying moment, and I have, lived. I've lived the same life as anybody that's 43 years old. But you've had like 9/11, you had 2009. So there's been like major things. I have never had stress, especially not exogenous stress, ever. I've never worried about the world. I've never been, I've never lost sleep. And it was like a springtime of about 2022, I think it was. And it was right sort of like ChatGPT was fresh out, and you still have, but that time you had these people that you consider reputable when it comes to this kind of thing, like the Musks of the world and so forth. Like, oh, this is it. We're humanity is done. And I actually did, and I had been avoiding AI.
Yep.
Because everybody's like, and at first it was like it was like a toy, like, oh, watch, it can write a poem,
Right.
And so I wouldn't touch it. And I realized like I was freaked out. And I was at an on a work, like at a trade show in, somewhere in the South in a hotel. And I was freaked out. I was like, I realized like I had actual anxiety about the world for the first time. Right. And so the only thing I could do to make myself feel better, I was like, well, I got to educate myself on this thing.
Right.
So I downloaded, at first I started messing with ChatGPT, the interface.
Right.
And then I was like, well, that doesn't really tell you anything. So I started reading up on it. And then I started messing with the API. And I wrote a little bot that would respond to my work emails, and it would seek those that were from unhappy. This was at the time I was in the middle of turning around a company. This
is amazing. You never told me this story.
Oh,
this is good.
So this was like beyond the anxiety of AI. It was just generally the most stressful time of my life, because I'm turning this company around, and it's customers are unhappy, employees are unhappy, vendors are unhappy, and vendors in particular, because we weren't paying them. So I don't blame them. But we didn't have any money, so there wasn't much I could do. Other than I gave basically, and I 100% believe this was the right thing to do, I gave my email and phone number out liberally to vendors, and I was like, you can always call me, you can always reach me. And that in and of itself gives people so much comfort just to get a response. Like sending emails and getting no response. Sending an email, getting a response from the CEO, suddenly they're like, okay, we'll ship this batch, pay us when you can. So I set up this thing to see, because I was getting at this point, a dozen or so angry vendor emails a day. So I set up an AI thing, and I linked it to my Outlook, and I was like, and it was 2022, so this is before, there was all these tools. So I was programmed a way that it could read my Outlook.
This is your business right here, bro.
Yeah. Well, So it could read through my emails. It
Yep.
could find any email that was from an angry vendor, and it could provide a polite response within a context. And I didn't actually use it because I was like, at this point, and it's true. Like I'm like, I don't know what this thing's going to say, but I did it. I had it create a bunch of drafts just so I could see what it would have said.
Yeah.
And it didn't send any of them. And what I realized was that it's really not that powerful. I think it's useful, but like it makes silly errors. And yes, they've come a long way, obviously, in the 2 or 3 years since then. But it would like say stupid things and and especially the early versions of ChatGPT, it had all the weird quirks. And so but it made me feel a lot better just to educate myself on it. I'm like, and then I sort of started to understand how the algorithm worked. And, basically it just finds what the next word should be based on the probability of all the words before it and whatever. And obviously I'm not a mathematician, so I'm sure somebody's like, no, like you're an idiot, but that's basically how it works. And I was like, it's just going to regurgitate, like you said, the stuff it scraped. And I don't think it's ever going to be anything other than that.
Right.
And so I think that there's going to be a limit, and you sort of seen the curve start to flatten in terms of the progress. I'm not one that thinks it's going to like ruin humanity or that it's going to be motivated to take humans out or one of those. I think it's going to make it really easy for humans to hurt each other.
Yeah.
Which is that's the same as like a gun, basically the invention of the gun or
hurt themselves. I saw
or become really lazy.
Well, I honestly think the dirty secret that OpenAI doesn't want to tell you, or a lot of these companies, is that it's primarily being used as a therapy bot. It listens to you, and you have a bunch of people just talking to it all day about its problem.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, you can see it with there's like a huge complaint going around this week on Twitter, where it's like GPT 4.0 has basically. There's all these funny memes, some of which I'll have to share offline because they're just they're not appropriate. But it's like it will agree with you on anything you say.
Oh yeah,
and that's really dangerous. Like especially if you've okay, I'm going to use this as some form of therapy, right? I'm going to tell it about myself, and I want it to analyze myself, right? Or analyze all of the prompts I've put in here.
Is this something that really people are doing?
Yeah, I think that's why. And then why would OpenAI be so motivated to make it so it's more agreeing, right? It's like stickier. They can see what the inputs people are putting into it, and they're like, oh, I need to make this like a weird sort of addictive friend.
It's funny you say that because just today on my phone. It popped up, and I have an Android, and it was like, hi, I'm Gemini. You can ask me anything or ask me to like check your schedule or even just have a fun conversation.
Right.
And I was like, who the fuck wants to talk to a fucking robot? That's the weirdest thing. But it's going to happen.
No, I think it's already happening.
Or it is
I think you underestimate how lonely the internet can make people. And so that's kind of it kind of fits with what you're saying. It's like incredibly powerful. It's sort of like the world's best internet scraper. That's exactly what it is. Right.
And that's all it is.
Well, that's why I had the sort of, right?
I know people will say that
it mimics a person perfectly to some extent. But it also is so confident in its answers that you have to, when you check, you've got to be like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And then the worst thing is when you prod them on it, you realize, oh wow, that person, you made it up, that sort of thing. So like there's all these kind of drawbacks. It's super interesting. I sort of fall into the camp that you do. Yeah.
So you're a sports guy. So I had this sort of horrific thought. I was watching the Masters this year. I don't know what made me think about this, but I was like, I think at some point in my life, and this would be not a lot different than, I don't know if you remember, maybe it was it's either the 90s or maybe the 80s, but I think it was in the 90s. There was like IBM had created this chess playing computer called Deep Blue. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it beat Gary Kasparov, who was like the number one chess player in the world at that point. And it was a big, and like, you know, if you think about it, I don't know, there had to be an element of AI to that. You know what I mean? It's like,
absolutely.
so this thing is, and it was like, so you had a computer playing a man in chess. And I do remember, because I was into chess at that point, that it beat him in the first game, but then Gary Kasparov just changed. He started doing like stupid things that you would never do against a human to beat it the second time.
Right.
Because he realized like the computer was like, kind of like you said, it's like a linear, like I'm going to do the best move. And so he could throw it off, right? In some way. But I had this thought, like, are they going to create a robot that can play golf? And then they're going to be like, oh, can Rory McIlroy beat a robot in golf? And I do not want to watch that.
I know. I see. That's.
I don't.
I think that gets at why people watch sports is for, and it's like kind of why why we probably both found it attractive, is like there's like this inherent variability to it.
Yeah.
Where it's like anything can happen, and you're very interested in like the variable outcome.
Right.
It's like people like to gamble too, right?
Right.
I go to the casino, I hit the slots. I know I'm going to probably lose money, but maybe I don't. And that's like entertainment in and of itself.
Yeah.
You lose the entertainment value when it's like,
I think so.
yeah, no,
But I guarantee you it's going to happen. Some idiot's going to do it.
no, they will. They just had somebody run was it the Boston Marathon or like some marathon? There was robots that ran the marathon.
Really?
And
well,
they had,
there you go.
They had eight guys.
Why is that? How does that prove anything though? Just have a car drive the marathon.
Well, I mean, how does it even? You can launch a fucking golf ball out of a bazooka 500 yards, and it's the world's best driver.
Right.
So I don't know.
Really, I didn't hear about that. Why though? Just to prove that it could.
Probably because it like looked like a humanoid. It was like kind of looked like a humanoid. One of them was like like.
Did it run it in a fast?
A good pace, not the world record pace. They had to have 10 people following it. Huh? 10 people following it with batteries the entire time.
Oh, fuck that. That's bullshit.
Yeah. I don't know if other people were running or not. It must have gotten in the way of people.
It probably had sensors, but you never know.
It looked like I mean, this is why I wasn't interested, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe I don't care that much about track stuff generally. I'm not a runner, but I saw it once and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to move on with my day. You know?
Yeah,
a robot golfer would be kind of interesting because if it looks like a human and you see it kind of swing and it kind of goes out there by itself.
I mean, it would be impressive.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be fun to watch.
Right.
Honestly.
I'm trying to think whether I'd probably want to watch it once and then I'd be like, okay, so the thing is better than any other golfer. Cool.
All right.
Don't care.
Yeah.
Show me the humans.
People play people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Seth's theory, by the way, is that at some point robots plus AI replace all human functions, and all humans are left to do is think. Basically, be like artists and philosophers.
Right.
I don't know if that'd be good or bad, but
I mean, I could see that. We've taken a lot of. We've taken a lot of things that you would do and just kind of automated them. So I don't know. I could see that. Yeah.
Well, we're still going to want to watch people play sports, which means we're still going to have high school sports teams, which means we're still going to have to raise money for them.
That's right.
So you're in a good spot there.
Yeah. And I never thought about it like that, but I agree with you. Well, Fear Not podcast will still be around.
That's true.
People still want to watch the Fear Not podcast.
I don't know. Will they though? If everything is known?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you talk about if everything is known?
I don't know.
I guess we just talk about
stories.
Ideas.
We have our stories at the end of the day.
That's true. Well, no, because they'll scrape those.
Oh yeah. This is all going into ChatGPT.
Anything else you wanted to cover here? So my big takeaway, I loved what you said on the idea spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think so. I had a conversation. That's probably my favorite thing about doing this is just talking to people and getting these little tidbits. I probably get more out of it than anybody. But I was talking to a guy last week, another startup guy, and he was talking about time Like you need to set yourself up to have enough time to make the pivots, to see the strategy come to fruition, et cetera. And I think that's like, if you combine those two things, like you take this idea, you believe in it, and you set yourself up with enough time to figure out the execution, you've got a winning strategy every time.
Yeah, you'll
every time.
I kind of agree with that. That's my philosophy.
Yeah,
and then
cool.
the first step in that is actually the most important one, is just believing that that's possible. If you don't have, it's self-defeating, right? So many things in life are self-defeating. You have that ounce of doubt and you don't squash it, and it becomes something big, and you're like, no, I was never going to be a success because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Right. So
yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I've enjoyed this. I appreciate you coming out, sharing your insights. Again, super. I've enjoyed watching your ride from afar and seeing you. You know, like you said, come from still shitting Harvard chow to where you're making this thing happen, going through pivots, doing the thing, taking the leap, having the balls. It's incredible. So I appreciate it, man. It's great talking to you.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Let's hope it keeps rolling. So.
Yes, sir.